So, hi, my name is Rohit, and I'm working as a postdoctoral fellow in the Tel Aviv University. And I'm here with Yarden. Yeah, right?
Yarden.
Yarden from the Study in Israel program. So she'll be telling us about everything about how you can go ahead with the studies in Israel, about the scholarship available from the bachelor's to the master's to the PhD, as well as the postdocs, and what kind of scholarships and all you can avail before coming here and even after you are here, and so everything about that.
Okay, so my name is Yarden. I work at the Council for Higher Education of Israel, and I work in the International Students Affairs Office. So Study in Israel is actually an initiative that was started by the Council for Higher Education to attract international students for Israel. We see that international students bring a lot of value to Israel, to the higher education system here. And we think that also academic studies in Israel have a lot to provide the international student, both in terms of the academic value that they receive, and in terms of the experience living in Israel. Israel has so much to offer. It's a small country, but there's so much to do here.
I think the first question will be, why Israel?
Okay, that's a great question. So why Israel? There are a couple of reasons. I'll give you 5 to start off with. The first reason is that in Israel, you can pursue your education in a world-class center of academic excellence, which means that the universities are all very well ranked globally, and studies are at a very high level. You can see here that we have 7 universities in the Shanghai rankings, one of the most prestigious rankings in the world. And recently, 3 universities have made it to the top 100 in the Shanghai rankings. Weizmann Institute of Science, for example, is ranked number 8 for research quality. Tel Aviv University is ranked 19th for citation impact per faculty member. You can see that here are some of the academics that have come out of Israeli universities. We have many Nobel winners, as well as a winner of the Abel Prize, which is you can call it the mathematics version of the Nobel Prize. And what's really unique about Israel is that these professors teach the students, and in a way that the students really get to learn and interact with them directly. And so there's really a very close contact between these well-known academics to the students and researchers. Israel is known as the startup nation. There's a lot of startups that really begin from academia, which means that students already from their studies, they get the very the very core sense of entrepreneurship and innovation that Israel has to offer. As you can see here, Israel is highly ranked also in terms of the startup ecosystems and innovation. For example, in the Bloomberg Index, it was called the 7th most innovative country. Startup Genome also ranked Tel Aviv as the 7th in the world. So Israel really churns out a lot of entrepreneurs, and that's something that the international student gets a taste of when they come study here. The 4th reason why to study in Israel is that Israel has a very vibrant, dynamic lifestyle, which means that there's so much to do within such a small country. You can get from top to bottom within 7 to 8 hours driving, but within those 7 to 8 hours, you can do so much. You can go to the beach, you can go to the old city in Jerusalem. You can go out to bars, or you can go out hiking. You can do so much while you're here and take full advantage of everything that Israel has to offer. There's also an exceptional mix of cultures, which, as you can see here, these are some of the cities that most international students study at. So, for example, down south in Beersheba, you have desert. In Jerusalem, you have the old city. In Tel Aviv, you have the beach. In Haifa, you have the Baha'i gardens. There's so many different people and cultures and religions that you can experience while you're here. So it's very important for Israel, as I mentioned earlier, to welcome international students to Israel. Indian students are the second biggest population of international students in Israel, and they're very warmly accepted by Israeli citizens as well as the universities. And we really encourage international students and Indian students to come, because there really is a community laid out for them. So Israel has 61 higher education institutions. There are 10 universities, 30 colleges, 21 education colleges. And the universities are different from colleges because universities offer PhD and postdoc programs, whereas colleges do not. So these are our universities. As you can see, there are 9 universities. There's also the Open University that's not listed here. All of them, except for Reichman University, are public universities. Reichman University, which used to be IDC Herzliya, is a private university. So studying in Israel is completely accessible for Indian students. And there are many programs that are taught in English. There are full degree programs, and there are study abroad exchange programs, there are short-term programs, and there's postdoctoral research that's offered at all the universities. It is important to mention that most universities require an internationally recognized English qualification, such as the TOEFL or IELTS. There are also many different fields of study that are offered by the universities. Our top highlighted fields of study are science and engineering, business and entrepreneurship, agriculture and sustainability, as well as for social studies and humanities, international relations, Middle Eastern and Jewish studies. So on our website, we have a search engine where you can actually find all of the programs that might interest you. In terms of tuition, Israeli tuition fees are very competitive as compared, for example, to other Western countries. Undergraduate degrees are between $4,000 to $15,000 a year. Master's degrees start at $5,500 a year. PhDs and postdoctoral research programs are scholarship-based. In terms of cost of living, it really depends, because cities that are more in the periphery are cheaper. For example, Beersheba and Haifa are cheaper. But there are housing options for all of the locations. So many students sleep in the dorms. And so really the cost of living does depend on where you are in Israel. In terms of scholarships, what's most relevant for Indian students are the following. There is the MFA scholarships, which provide subsidy for Hebrew language classes and short-term programs. There is the Council for Higher Education PhD Sandwich Program, which allows for an Indian PhD student to come do research here for a year and then return to their program in the university they came from. There's also the Council for Higher Education and Academy of Sciences Postdoctoral Fellowship. And this is a fellowship that's provided for postdoctoral researchers. And actually the call just ended, but I would recommend looking out for the call next year as well. And in addition to that, there are also scholarships that are offered from the universities and also financial aid as well. Okay, in terms of visas, so international students need an A2 student visa in order to come to Israel. And the applications for visas are made at the local Israeli embassy or consulates. And so that's made online. And when you apply for a visa, your spouse and children are also granted visas. It's also important to mention that it is possible to work at the university on a part-time basis. When you apply for the visa, you need to make sure that it says that you can work.
So it's like if I'm studying here as a BTech student, a bachelor student, so am I allowed to work during my course? Like,
So
like in the US and the UK, so there is a
right.
possibility that we can work like for like some hours, like 20 hours or 30 hours a week, we can work outside also. So is it some kind of possibility here also?
So as a bachelor student, unfortunately, there is no possibility. Bachelor students are limited. Only postgraduate students are able to work.
So students are provided with a work permit, so they can work outside also, right?
They can't work outside of the university. They can only work within the university as a research or a teaching assistant.
Is there any possibility that he can actually work here and just get something out of it, so that even if he's not actually making good money but can pay for his studies? Is there something like that possible for the bachelor students?
Unfortunately, no, because bachelor students that are here on a student visa are not permitted to work legally in Israel. I've heard of a possibility of working for a foreign company outside of Israel, but to work in Israel, it is impossible.
So it's just like that master student can work, but only inside the university, and the bachelor or even the master student cannot work outside the university. The same is the thing with postdocs and PhDs also.
Right, postgraduates, yeah. Graduate students, postgrad can work, bachelors can't.
Okay, they only can work inside the university. Like
right.
if the professor is offering them something, or if the university is offering them something to work, they can work and get an extra money.
Yeah.
Is it possible that, like, after completing my studies, like even after completing my bachelor's, is there something like that Israel assures students that they can get an opportunity to work for like 1 year or 2 years, like post study visas, something like that?
So there is the option, like I said, there's the option of working in high tech if you finish a degree in a field that's relevant. For example, if you're a bachelor student and you finished a degree in computer science,
okay,
you can go work in an Israeli high tech company for a year following.
No, that depends upon the company if he hires or not. So is there any possibility, like there is, if I'm in UK and I'm completing a master's there in UK, I get a post master's visa, like work visa for 2 years, so that I can live in there for 2 more years and earn as per that. So is there anything like that in Israel?
From the Israeli government, it isn't possible for international students to stay in Israel after they've exceeded their student visa. The student visa, it's good for the amount of time that they're a student, but after that, in terms of work opportunities afterwards, for the most part, it is impossible.
Okay, so what is your general suggestion on this? If someone is actually joining, so is what is the general suggestion? That what shall he do after, like, because he has to search for a job, and if the country which is actually teaching him is not giving him a job, so is it worth enough to spend?
That's a good question.
4 or 5
That's a good
years?
question.
Yeah,
that's a good question if it's worth it or not, because a lot of international students do want to go to a country where they have a promised career afterwards.
Yeah.
But I think what Israel is good at is giving them the experience and the opportunities for during their degree.
So if a bachelor student is about to complete his degree and he's not able to find a good job here in Israel, is there something like a backup plan or something that can help him out?
I mean, I think it's always good for the student to have a backup plan, whether it is back in their home country or to continue or to pursue their continuing education either here in Israel or in a university abroad. There are a lot of students that do continue their studies from their bachelor's to master's or master's to PhD here.
Okay, so I would just add on to this thing, because there might not be any opportunities here in Israel for that person, but yeah, the professors here are very cool and they have quite good contacts in the academia as well as the industry. So they never leave the student as such. They're always in a hunt to find something for him. So if he's a good student and is working good towards a good goal, like one of my friends who is a master's student in Tel Aviv University, she was helped by his supervisor and also by the group and all. So she now is going to Switzerland for doing a PhD. So somehow your guides and supervisors, they have the impact, a worldwide impact you can call that. But for a bachelor student, I think it is difficult to sustain for like 4 or 5 years without actually making anything.
Also, there is financial aid that's provided from the universities. And there are ways to lessen the costs, for example, by living in the dorms. I would say specifically for Indian students, there are no scholarships for bachelor students provided by the Israeli government, but it's always worth checking with the universities themselves. All of the scholarships you can find on our website, including the Tata scholarship. The main two that are important, I think, for Indian PhD and postdoctoral students are first, the PhD sandwich program. It's a program that allows a PhD student to come here for a year, and they're provided a scholarship.
Like a student is studying in an Indian university which is not having any kind of collaboration with the Israeli university. So if the student is actually wanting to join this sandwich program, can he apply, or what are the possibilities? They will require a letter of recommendation, or about the TOEFL or GRE or something like that. Do they need that?
GREs are accepted here, and as well as in terms of English language requirements, then they will want either the TOEFL or the.
So it's like even if they don't have the TOEFL or GRE or IELTS, so can someone apply?
It really depends on the requirements of the program, but most will require an English language exam.
Master students, they can join if their professor is actually willing to take them.
If the professor is ready to take them.
Yeah.
So for master's students, it depends. But for example, for PhD and postdoc, the process is different for applying, because for PhD and postdoc, you have to first find an advisor.
Okay.
And then you go through the registration to the university. So once the advisor is willing to take you on, then you go through the application process.
Is there a possibility that advisor will provide all the funds, or how will he arrange the scholarship for that, for a PhD?
So there are some advisors that actually turn to us and ask, because they do look for those scholarships as well. And sometimes they get assistance also from the university. And sometimes they also have their own private funding options.
The question is what actually one should do that he can actually join a PhD directly after master's. Is it just about the recommendation letters, or is there an internship kind of thing which is actually required, or something like if someone is joining a chemistry lab or any other lab, is there any requisite of just learning about the equipments and all? So.
Okay, well, first of all, there is a possibility to do an internship, and the process is similar. It means that you have to find an advisor, and then once they agree to take you on, then you go through the process also to do an internship. So that is a possibility. But in terms of being accepted directly to a PhD program, for example, it's very, very general of me to say, but the requirements do differ. But many times what they look for is your CV, recommendation letters, for example, proof of English level, and statement of purpose sometimes.
Yeah, cool. So I think that's it.
Okay, I'm going to send you a document with all of the links that will be relevant to you, including, for example, the links relevant to COVID, which isn't something we discussed, but the situation changes so much. Israel is very flexible. It's a very flexible country. I personally find that, Israelis will do anything to make something work. Yeah. And so I think that's something goes for academia as well. If they really want you, then they'll figure out a way to get you.
आगे ये टाइट आने तो एक और you.